Have you ever noticed how a person's true nature rarely shows up in their smile, their charm, or the polished life they present to the world? The real story lives somewhere deeper, beneath the practiced gestures, beneath the rehearsed confidence, beneath the carefully controlled words. Every human being walks around with a mask, and most people guard it with everything they have. But no matter how tightly they hold it, the truth always leaks out through two very specific psychological openings, to places where people cannot hide, cannot pretend, and cannot help revealing who they truly are. Imagine sitting across from someone you think you know, a friend, a lover, maybe even someone you've trusted for years. They seem steady, clean-hearted, composed, yet something feels misaligned. Their presence says, "I'm genuine," but your intuition whispers, "Look again." Deep inside, you sense a dissonance, faint crack in their masks, a quiet signal that something beneath the surface isn't matching the picture they paint. Most people ignore that instinct, but those who pay attention begin to see the truth that almost everyone else misses, because every person carries two psychological signatures that expose their hidden self. They're not complicated. You don't need training, therapy, or spiritual mastery to see them. You only need awareness of the two places a person loses control over their image. Awareness of the two places where the unconscious always slips through. The first is revealed through what they judge, not casually, but intensely. The second appears in how they react when their image is threatened, even slightly. When you understand these two portals, you stop being fooled by appearances. You stop mistaking performance for character. You stop believing the mask and start seeing the person. Let's begin with the first reveal: the judgments people cannot stop themselves from making. Every human carries qualities inside themselves they deny, avoid, or push into the shadows. And whatever they reject in themselves, they begin to see everywhere in the world. The harshest criticism someone throws at others is rarely about the other person, it's a confession about themselves. They reveal their insecurities and the traits they cannot tolerate. They expose their hidden desires and the qualities they condemn. They show you their wounds and the people they attack. Picture someone who constantly calls others fake, someone who becomes unusually irritated by charm, confidence, or social ease. On the surface, it might look like moral conviction, but underneath, it often hides a part of themselves they have disowned: a longing to express confidence, a desire to be seen, an envy they cannot admit. Intense judgment is always rooted in inner conflict. When someone reacts strongly to a trait in another, they are showing you the part of themselves they've tried to bury. This is the first mirror of character, not who they criticize, but how intensely they do it. The strength of the reaction always reveals the depth of the internal struggle. And once you learn to watch for emotional spikes, you'll begin seeing the truth behind people's words. Some of the people who praise others excessively are also revealing something about themselves. When admiration turns into worship, it often means the admirer is projecting their own hidden potential onto the other person's qualities they possess but haven't yet claimed. So the first window into character is simple. What someone cannot stand in others is what they haven't accepted in themselves. And what someone idealizes in others is what they secretly wish to awaken within. The second reveal is even more telling. It shows up the moment a person's mask begins to crack, when their image, reputation, or competence is questioned. When their performance layer is threatened, their real self bursts through. It might last only a few seconds, but those few seconds reveal more about their character than years of controlled behavior. Think of someone who prides themselves on being calm, professional, and composed. They wear that identity like armor, but the moment someone challenges their decision, or points out a mistake, or questions their competence, the calmness collapses. Their voice sharpens, their posture stiffens, blame spills out of them. They expose insecurity, entitlement, or fear without meaning to. This breakdown of the persona is one of the most honest moments a human being ever has. When someone feels exposed, their unconscious defenses rush forward. Some attack, some withdraw, some manipulate, some distract. Those reactions are their real behavioral patterns, unfiltered and unedited. The people with the most fragile masks react with the strongest defenses. They lash out, they panic, they blame, they distort the story to protect their image. But those who have integrated themselves, those who have faced their inner patterns, respond differently. They pause. They consider. They feel discomfort, but they don't drown in it. They process before they speak. Their inner and outer selves are aligned. And this is the second truth. A person's reaction to pressure shows you who they really are. In everyday life, these moments happen constantly. When someone's phone dies and they lose access to the attention they rely on. When they're forced to wait longer than they expected. When someone doesn't respond the way they wanted. When a joke doesn't land. When plans fall apart. The micro cracks in behavior, the glance, the tone shift, the posture change always expose character. Because no matter how magnificent someone's mask is, it cannot survive pressure. And no matter how ordinary someone's mask is, the truth will always rise beneath it. The people who have done the deepest inner work are the ones who stay grounded even when the world pushes against them. Their mask and their authentic self are nearly the same. They don't need to perform. They don't need to protect an image. They don't need to project their shadows outward. They can receive discomfort without becoming hostile and face reality without distortion. They are not perfect, but they are honest. This is why these two reveals, the judgments we cast and the reactions we show under pressure, are the clearest windows into the human soul. They bypass everything we fabricate, everything we pretend, everything we polish. They show the raw patterns that live beneath that. And now that you've entered these two gateways into human character, the next step is understanding why these patterns are so reliable and why they reveal truths we cannot hide, even from ourselves. When we look beneath the surface of human behavior, something remarkable becomes clear. People rarely understand the forces driving their own reactions. They believe they choose their responses consciously, but a deeper architecture and inner blueprint guides them long before they realize it. And this hidden blueprint is what makes the two character reveals so powerful. They bypass the polished personality and expose the unedited truth. Inside every mind, there is a quiet struggle between the self we show and the self we avoid. The self we present to the world is shaped from childhood, a collection of behaviors designed to earn approval, avoid rejection, and survive emotionally. But the parts of ourselves we suppress never disappear. They sink into the unconscious, gathering weight, emotion, and energy, until they begin leaking into our judgments, reactions, and projections. This is why the traits we reject in ourselves keep showing up in the world around us. It's not the world speaking, it's our own shadow, reflected back through other people. And the intensity of our judgment reveals how deeply that rejected trait still lives inside us. Imagine someone who cannot tolerate arrogance. They talk endlessly about how certain people are self-absorbed, entitled, or boastful. Yet beneath the anger might lie a fragile relationship with confidence, either a deep craving for it, or a fear of expressing it. Their judgment becomes a mirror they refuse to face. Or imagine someone who despises needy people. They pride themselves on being self-sufficient, independent, and emotionally contained. But hidden within them is often a longing for care, support, or closeness, a need they've never felt safe expressing. Their criticism is simply the shadow of their unmet needs. This is the secret no one wants to admit. Every harsh judgment we make reveals something we haven't healed, and every exaggerated admiration reveals something we haven't yet embodied. But the shadow is only one side of the story. The second reveal, the cracking of the mask, exposes patterns that run even deeper. Every person builds a persona, a version of themselves they hope the world accepts. Some create the persona of the calm one. Some build the persona of the helpful one. Some shape themselves as the strong one, the competent one, the agreeable one, the successful one. But a persona must be constantly defended. It requires energy to maintain, and nothing exhausts a human faster than pretending to be something they're not. So the moment life pushes against that persona, the real self spills out. It happens when someone faces criticism. It happens when someone feels ignored. It happens when someone is embarrassed, corrected, or caught off guard. And it happens in ordinary moments. Moments small enough that the mask slips before they can catch it. A person who pretends to be calm becomes sharp, aggressive, or withdrawn when challenged. A person who pretends to be confident becomes defensive or insecure when contradicted. A person who pretends to be kind becomes manipulative when their kindness isn't rewarded. A person who pretends to be strong collapses under even slight emotional weight. These tiny cracks reveal what a lifetime of performance tries to hide. The most revealing moments are not dramatic confrontations. They're the small moments. When plans change, when they're ignored, when they're misunderstood, when someone they want approval from does not give it, when they feel powerless, when they lose control. Even briefly, this is where the true self emerges. And once you learn to observe these cracks, you see people clearly: friends, co-workers, partners, strangers. Their unconscious patterns become visible. Their hidden emotions become readable. Their persona becomes transparent. But here's the truth most people forget. Understanding these patterns is not just about reading others, it's about awakening to yourself. Because the same blueprint that organizes their mind also lives inside yours. Those moments when you judge with intensity. Those moments when your mask cracks. Those moments when you react before you can think. All of them reveal who you are beneath your own persona. If you pay attention, you begin to see your reactions as messages, not mistakes. Judgment becomes information. Defensiveness becomes a clue. Irritation becomes a signal. Embarrassment becomes a doorway. The very things you try to hide, the moments you're ashamed of, the reactions you wish you didn't have, are the keys to understanding your inner world. And when you face them directly, without denial, something powerful happens. Awareness begins to loosen the grip of old patterns. The unconscious begins to rise into consciousness. The mask begins to fall away on its own. This awareness also changes how you see others. You stop taking people's reactions personally. You understand the fear behind their aggression. You sense the insecurity behind their arrogance. You see the longing behind their judgment. You recognize the wound beneath their behavior. And this shift creates a new way of relating to the world. You begin responding instead of reacting. You begin observing instead of absorbing. You begin understanding instead of judging. But to see this clearly, there is one more step, a deeper level of character reading that goes beyond judgment and persona cracks. A method that exposes whether a person is capable of growth or trapped in unconscious repetition. It's the ultimate character test, not of others, but of yourself. It begins the moment someone's shadow is mirrored back to them, and you watch how they handle it. The real test of someone's character doesn't happen when they're judging others, or when their mask slips by accident. It happens in the moment their own darkness is gently shown to them, when their shadow is mirrored back, and they're forced to see themselves more clearly than they'd like. That single moment separates those who are capable of growth from those who will repeat the same patterns for the rest of their lives. Imagine you notice that someone is always attacking selfish people. You sense the projection. One day, instead of agreeing or staying silent, you ask calmly, "Do you ever feel guilty for wanting something just for yourself?" That question is not an accusation. It is a mirror. And how they respond to that mirror tells you everything. Some people will immediately defend. They'll get sharp, offended, or sarcastic. They'll change the subject or attack you for daring to suggest they might be like the people they judge. This reaction shows a psyche that is heavily defended, unable to tolerate even a glimpse of its own shadow. These are the people who stay stuck. Their life changes on the surface, but their patterns never do. Others will deflect with logic. They might say, "Yes, everyone has flaws," or "I know I judge. But that's just how I am," while staying emotionally untouched. They understand the idea intellectually, but keep it safely away from their heart. They're aware enough to talk about their issues, but not yet willing to feel them. Change for them is possible, but slow. And then there is a third response. A pause, a softening, a quiet, "Maybe you're right. That actually makes me uncomfortable to admit." In that moment, defensiveness gives way to honesty. The person hasn't just understood something. They've let it land inside. This is where transformation begins. Not in perfect self-control, not in lofty words, but in those fragile moments where truth hurts and is still welcomed. The same is true for you. When someone reflects something uncomfortable back to you, your impatience, your ego, your avoidance, your first internal movement is your clearest teacher. Do you rush to explain, justify, or blame? Or can you sit with the sting and ask, what if there is some truth here? That question is not weakness. It is psychological strength. It is the beginning of becoming someone who isn't run by unconscious habits. But this ability can be twisted. There is a danger in learning how to read people. Once you see projections and masks, it becomes very easy to turn into a silent predator, someone who uses insight as a weapon. You can humiliate instead of help. You can attack instead of understand. You can expose people's shadows, not to free them, but to feel superior. The mind that is unable to face its own pain often distracts itself by dissecting everyone else. You know this is happening when you feel powerful every time you decode someone, when your analysis makes you colder instead of kinder, when you collect other people's weaknesses like trophies. In that state, you are not conscious. You're simply feeding your own wounded ego through psychological language. Your insight has become another mask. The healthier path is completely different. You still see, but you see with humility. You recognize that every projection you notice in others exists in you as potential. Every defense mechanism you detect is something your own mind has used in another form. Instead of thinking, I'm above this, you think, this, too, is human. This, too, lives somewhere in me. Then a quiet reversal happens. You stop using your understanding to control people and start using it to understand them. You listen beneath their words. You feel the fear behind their anger, the shame behind their arrogance, the loneliness behind their cruelty. And instead of feeding that cycle with more judgment, you introduce something new: awareness, boundary, compassion, or silence, depending on what's needed. At the same time, everyone around you becomes a mirror. The person who annoys you the most shows you the part of yourself you're least willing to see. The person you admire the most shows you the part of yourself you're most afraid to claim. The people who feel strangely familiar, even when you've just met, are usually living out patterns that resonate deeply with your own. Life becomes one long lesson in self-recognition. This doesn't make you passive. It makes you precise. Instead of reacting blindly, you start asking different questions inside yourself. Why did this specific behavior trigger me so much? What part of me feels threatened right now? What am I trying to protect? What would happen if I didn't defend myself in the old way? Slowly, the space between stimulus and response begins to widen. You catch yourself in the act of projecting and can stop mid-sentence. You feel the mask rising, the need to impress, to appear right, to stay in control, and you can let it fall instead. You sense yourself about to slip into old patterns, and you choose differently, even if your body is still shaking with the urge to do what you always did. This is what real growth looks like. Not perfection, not constant calm, but a growing ability to remain honest in the middle of your own discomfort. More choice where there used to be only reflex. More truth where there used to be only performance. And something else shifts as this happens. The way you move through the world, conflicts become less about winning and more about seeing what is actually going on beneath the surface. Difficult people become less like enemies and more like X-rays, revealing where your own fractures still live. Mistakes stop being proof that you're broken and start becoming data for your next step, of course. This level of awareness has a cost. The more clearly you see, the less satisfied you become with shallow interactions. You may feel a strange loneliness, not because you're alone, but because you can no longer pretend. You can't unsee the games, the masks, the unspoken wounds in everyday conversation. The old ways of bonding through gossip, judgment, or shared pretending lose their flavor. That's the price of waking up. You lose your place in the crowd before you find your place with the conscious. But this loneliness is not the end. It's a passage. As you continue to live with awareness, you start attracting different kinds of people, those who are also tired of pretending, who are willing to be seen as they are, who want connection more than performance. With them, conversation feels lighter even when it's deep, playful even when it's serious, honest even when it's uncomfortable. The relationship is no longer to masks interacting, but to evolving humans meeting as truthfully as they can. In this way, your own inner work becomes contagious. You stop mirroring people's unconsciousness and start mirroring their possibilities. You are no longer pulled into every drama, which quietly invites others to step out of theirs. You show that it's possible to admit fault without collapsing, to hear hard truths without attacking, to hold power without controlling. You become living evidence that there is another way to exist. That is the real purpose of learning to read character. Not to become a silent judge of everyone around you, but to become responsible for what you bring into every room. To see clearly enough that you don't add more unconsciousness to an already unconscious world. To understand people deeply enough that you can choose when to stay, when to walk away, and when to simply love someone from a distance without abandoning yourself. In the end, the two things that reveal someone's character, who they judge and how they behave, when their image is threatened, are not tools to expose others. They are invitations to examine yourself. Who do you judge the most? What does that reveal about the parts of you you're still running from? When your own image cracks, do you defend, attack, or breathe and tell the truth? The character that matters most is not the one you're trying to decode in others. It's the one you are quietly building, choice by choice, reaction by reaction, day after day, if you're willing to watch your judgments, to feel your defensiveness, to let your masks fall one by one. You won't just become good at reading people. You'll become someone who no longer needs a mask. Someone whose inner and outer life finally match. Someone whose presence itself tells the truth, even in silence.